When most people think of the American Revolution, they imagine dramatic battlefield victories. But the first great American victory came without one decisive battle. Instead, thousands of ordinary farmers, tradesmen, fishermen, and townspeople surrounded one of the most powerful armies on earth and simply refused to let them leave. For nearly a year, Boston became a prison for the British Army. This siege transformed scattered colonial resistance into America's first organized military campaign. It also introduced a new commander who would soon become one of history's most famous generals. The battles of Lexington and Concord forced British troops back into Boston. They had survived the retreat, but they were trapped. The costly victory at Bunker Hill proved something even more important. Although the British could seize ground, they could not easily defeat determined colonial defenders. Instead of marching across New England, General Thomas Gage found himself confined inside Boston. Outside waited thousands of armed New Englanders. Boston in 1775 looked very different from today's city. It sat on a small peninsula, connected to the mainland by a narrow strip of land known as Boston Neck. The Royal Navy controlled the surrounding waters. The British Army occupied the town itself. Yet every road leading inland was watched by colonial militia. Although the British controlled Boston, the Americans controlled nearly everything outside it. The siege had begun. The militia surrounding Boston did not come only from Massachusetts. Men arrived from across New England, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Rhode Island. Many had left farms ready for harvest. Others abandoned businesses and families. Few wore uniforms. Most brought their own muskets. Together they created a massive ring around Boston stretching for miles. Calling these men an army is generous. Each colony organized its own regiments, different officers, different equipment, different pay, different enlistment periods. Some soldiers planned to serve only a few months before returning home. Food was inconsistent. Ammunition was scarce. Discipline varied widely. Yet somehow they maintained the siege. While Boston remained surrounded, delegates met in Philadelphia. The crisis demanded more than local militia. It required a united military force. In June 1775, the Second Continental Congress created the Continental Army. Instead of 13 separate colonial forces, America would now fight as one. Congress selected an experienced Virginian officer to command the new army. George Washington arrived outside Boston in July 1775. His appointment carried tremendous symbolic importance. The fighting had begun in New England, but the Revolution belonged to all the colonies. Washington immediately discovered enormous problems. There were fewer supplies than expected, weapons were limited, gunpowder was dangerously scarce, and the army existed mostly on paper. Washington's first challenge was organization. He introduced regular drills, improved discipline, standardized command structures, supply records, engineering projects, camp sanitation. He understood that enthusiasm alone could not defeat the British Army. Professionalism would. Life during the siege was difficult. Food shortages were common, clothing wore out quickly, disease spread through crowded camps. Winter approached. Many soldiers had little experience with military life. Yet despite these hardships, the army remained in position. Conditions inside Boston were hardly better. Thousands of civilians remained trapped alongside British soldiers. Food became increasingly scarce, firewood was limited. Military supplies had to arrive by sea. Many loyalists questioned whether the crown could truly restore order. Boston had become an occupied city isolated from the surrounding countryside. The siege was rarely quiet. Small patrols clashed regularly. Sharpshooters fired across defensive lines. Both sides tested one another's positions. Raids attempted to gather intelligence or supplies. Although no massive battle occurred, the danger never disappeared. Washington faced a terrifying reality. His army barely possessed enough gunpowder to fight one major battle. He carefully concealed this weakness from the British. Had they known the truth, the siege might have ended very differently. Instead, both armies largely remained cautious. A young Boston bookseller named Henry Knox proposed an extraordinary solution. Months earlier, colonial forces had captured Fort Ticonderoga. Its heavy cannon sat unused. Knox volunteered to bring them to Boston. The journey covered roughly 300 miles, across frozen rivers, snow-covered mountains, using sleds, oxen, and determination. Many believed it impossible. During one of the harshest winters imaginable, Knox and his team slowly hauled dozens of heavy artillery pieces across New York and Massachusetts. Frozen lakes became highways. Villagers offered assistance. Bridges had to be reinforced, roads repaired. By January 1776, the impossible mission had succeeded. Washington now possessed the artillery he needed. He selected the high ground overlooking Boston known as Dorchester Heights. Under cover of darkness, thousands of soldiers worked silently. Earthworks, barricades, gun platforms. By sunrise, massive cannon overlooked both Boston and the Royal Navy. British commanders could scarcely believe what they saw. Overnight, an entire fortified position had appeared. The guns threatened every British ship, every defensive position, every supply route. Attempting another assault similar to Bunker Hill promised terrible casualties. Remaining in Boston had become impossible. On March 17, 1776, British soldiers boarded waiting transports. More than 100 ships departed Boston Harbor. They carried approximately 9,000 soldiers, hundreds of loyalists, families, supplies. The British sailed to Halifax, Nova Scotia. Without a major battle, the siege had ended. Boston was free. It marked the first major strategic victory of the Revolution. The Continental Army had proven it could force the British to abandon one of North America's most important cities. The victory also dramatically increased confidence throughout the colonies. Perhaps Britain could be defeated after all. The siege of Boston accomplished far more than liberating one city. It united colonial forces, established Washington's leadership, created the Continental Army, demonstrated American engineering and logistics, and showed Britain that this rebellion would not quickly collapse. The Revolution had entered a new phase. Before there was a Declaration of Independence, before there was a United States, New England had already accomplished something extraordinary. An empire had been forced from Boston. But neither side imagined the war would last another 7 years. Next time, the colonies will take the most dangerous step of all. They will declare independence from the most powerful empire in the world.